A Wyoming blizzard hides a burning car with a girl chained inside, sparking a sheriff's thrilling fight to save her. Before we start, subscribe to Pause Verve. Like and share the video with those who need love. The Wyoming wind screamed across the plains, hurling snow against the windshield of Sheriff Caleb Dawson's patrol SUV. The wipers battled furiously, barely keeping a sliver of visibility as the storm swallowed the highway. In the back seat, his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, sat, bundled in a quilted jacket, her small hand buried in the thick fur of Ranger, their Belgian Malinois. The dog's amber eyes gleamed in the dim glow of the dashboard, his body relaxed but vigilant, a steady presence for Lily, who hadn't spoken since her mother's death 4 years ago. Caleb glanced at the rearview mirror, catching Lily's reflection. Her wide hazel eyes stared out the window, tracing the swirling snow as if searching for something beyond the storm. Ranger's head rested on her lap, his warmth a comfort Caleb could never replicate. The therapy dog had been a lifeline, trained to sense Lily's silent anxieties and anchor her when the world felt too big. Tonight, they were headed home from a late therapy session in the next county, where Dr. Willis had noted a flicker of progress. Lily had drawn a vibrant sunset, a rare burst of color in her usually muted sketches. "Almost home, Sparrow," Caleb said softly, using the nickname Anna had given their daughter. His voice was steady, but his grip on the wheel tightened. As the SUV shuddered against a gust, Pine Hollow was only 20 miles away, but in this blizzard it might as well have been 100. The radio crackled with static, the dispatcher's voice lost in the storm's roar. Caleb's military instincts, honed during years as an army. Ranger kept him alert, scanning the road for any sign of trouble. Then it came, a sharp, piercing bark from Ranger. The dog's ears shot up, his body snapping to attention. Caleb's pulse quickened. Ranger never barked without reason. "What is it, boy?" he murmured, slowing the SUV. Lily's hand tightened on Ranger's collar, her eyes darting to her father's face in the mirror. Another bark, more urgent, cut through the wind's howl. Ranger's nose pressed against the window, his breath fogging the glass as he whined, paws scratching at the door. Caleb squinted through the snow, his headlights catching a faint orange glow flickering against the white curtain. His stomach lurched. Fire. "Stay here, Lily," he said, his tone firm but calm. She nodded, her fingers still tangled in Ranger's fur, her expression unreadable but trusting. Caleb grabbed his flashlight and emergency kit from the passenger seat, pulling his sheriff's jacket tighter against the biting cold. The smell hit him as he stepped out, burning rubber and gasoline, sharp and acrid. He trudged through knee-deep snow toward the glow, the beam of his flashlight slicing through the blizzard. A sedan lay crumpled in a ditch, its front end buried. In a snowbank, flames licking up from the hood. The vehicle had skidded off the highway, its rear wheels dangling over the embankment. Caleb's heart pounded as he approached, his boots crunching through the icy crust. Something moved inside the car, a shadow shifting behind the smoke-filled windows. "Sheriff Dawson, Pine Hollow," he shouted, shielding his face from the heat. The driver's side window revealed a slumped figure, an adult male, blood streaking, his face unmoving. Caleb tried the door, locked. He checked for a pulse through the broken glass. Nothing. The stench of alcohol and charred metal stung his nose. This wasn't just a crash. Something was wrong. Then he heard it, a faint whimper, from the back seat. Caleb swung his flashlight, the beam catching a small figure curled on the floor behind the driver's seat. A girl, no older than 12, her wrists bound with chains that glinted in the light. Her eyes, wide with terror, locked onto his, her, mouth open in a silent scream. Smoke thickened, curling into the cabin as flames crept closer to the dashboard. There was no time. "I'm getting you out," Caleb called, smashing the rear window with his flashlight. Glass shattered and he cleared the shards with his sleeve. The girl flinched, her body trembling, but she didn't cry out. The chains were secured to the seat frame with a padlock, no key in sight. Caleb's mind raced. The fire was spreading, the heat searing his skin through his jacket. He drew his service weapon, aimed at the chain's anchor point, and fired. The shot echoed, deafening in the confined space, and the chain snapped free. The girl's wrists were still bound, raw skin visible beneath the metal, but there was no time to free her fully. Caleb climbed halfway through the window, his broad shoulders scraping against the frame. "Cover your face," he instructed, reaching for her. She was terrifyingly light, her body frail beneath dirty clothes. He pulled her through the window, cradling her against his chest as he stumbled back through the snow. Flames roared, engulfing the dashboard. 20 yards from the wreck, the gas tank ignited, a thunderous boom sending a fireball into the night sky. Caleb's lungs burned with smoke and exertion as he reached the SUV. Ranger barked frantically, his paws against the window, and Lily's pale face pressed close, her eyes wide with fear. Caleb yanked open the door, placing the girl gently beside Lily. "It's okay," he said, though the girl's hollow cheeks and haunted expression told him it wasn't. Under the dome light, he saw her clearly. Tangled blonde hair, delicate, features marred by dirt and bruises, a face that reminded him painfully of Anna's gentle beauty. "Sheriff Dawson," he said softly, catching his breath. "You're safe now." The girl stared at him, her eyes searching his face for truth, her chained hands trembling in her lap. Lily, silent but observant, scooted closer, her small hand brushing the edge of the girl's tattered sweater. Ranger settled between them, his warmth a quiet reassurance. Caleb radioed dispatch, his voice steady despite the adrenaline. "This is Sheriff Dawson. I need an ambulance at mile marker 17, Highway 22. Juvenile female, possible kidnapping victim. 1 adult male DOA, vehicle fire. Over." As he waited for a response, Caleb watched Lily in the rearview mirror. She reached for the girl's hand, her touch feather light, as if afraid to startle her. The girl didn't pull away, her fingers curling slightly around Lily. The storm had barely relented by the time Sheriff Caleb Dawson's SUV rolled into Pine Hollow, Wyoming, the town's welcome sign barely visible through the swirling snow. Pine Hollow was a speck on the map, home to 2,500 souls nestled in a valley, cradled by jagged, snow-dusted mountains. Its main street was a postcard of small-town America, a general store with creaky wooden floors, a diner called Mabel's where locals swapped gossip over coffee, and a community center where quilts were stitched and potlucks planned. Towering pines framed the town, their branches heavy with fresh powder, while the mountains glowed faintly purple under the fading dusk. It was the kind of place where neighbors shoveled each other's driveways and kids rode bikes until the streetlights buzzed on. But beneath Pine Hollow's cozy facade, shadows lingered. Whispers drifted through the diner about missing funds from the annual charity drive, and conversations hushed when Mayor Evelyn Carter swept in for her usual booth by the window. Her polished smile and tailored coats couldn't mask the unease. Some felt about her influence, her ability to silence questions with a single glance. The town's church, with its white steeple piercing the sky, was where most gathered on Sundays. Yet even there, murmurs about outside money in local projects stirred suspicion. Caleb Dawson hadn't grown up in Pine Hollow. He'd arrived 4 years ago, a widower with a then 4-year-old Lily and scars from his time as an Army Ranger that he didn't discuss. His wife, Anna, had died in a car accident on a rain-slicked road, leaving him to raise their daughter alone. The townsfolk respected Caleb's quiet competence as sheriff, though some found his direct gaze and clipped speech unsettling. He didn't linger at socials or share stories over beers at the Rusty Spur. Instead, he poured himself into his work and Lily, whose silence after Anna's death had carved a hollow space in his heart. Their home was a modest cabin on the edge of town, backed by national forest land where elk roamed and coyotes howled at night. The cabin was simple, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with a scuffed oak table, and a living room warmed by a stone fireplace. A wraparound porch offered a view of the stars on clear nights, where Caleb sipped coffee at dawn, Ranger patrolling the perimeter. Inside, Lily's crayon drawings covered the walls, trees, stars, and sometimes a woman with Anna's wavy auburn hair. Photos of Anna smiled from the mantel, her eyes bright with a warmth Caleb still felt in his bones. Her absence was a wound. That never quite closed, but Lily was his reason to keep going. Ranger wasn't just a pet. The Belgian Malinois had been trained first as a military working dog, then retrained as a therapy companion for Lily. His keen senses detected her meltdowns. Before they began, his weight a grounding force when her world spun out of control. Lily communicated through gestures and sketches, a language Caleb and Ranger had learned to read with care. Dr. Emily Harper, Pine Hollow's doctor and one of Caleb's few friends, had recommended Ranger after seeing Lily's struggles. She ran the town's clinic with a quiet strength, never pushing Lily to speak during check-ins, earning Caleb's trust. That night, as Caleb drove through the storm with Lily and the rescued girl in the back seat, Pine Hollow's secrets felt closer than ever. The girl, still shivering under an emergency blanket, hadn't spoken, her chained wrists a stark reminder of the darkness that had invaded their town. Caleb's mind churned with questions. Who was she? And how had she ended up in that burning car? The driver's lifeless body and the stench of alcohol suggested more than a simple accident. His instincts, sharpened by years in war zones, screamed that this was no isolated incident. At the clinic, Dr. Harper was waiting, her auburn hair tied back, her face etched with concern. Caleb carried the girl inside, her slight weight barely registering. Lily followed, clutching Ranger's leash, her eyes fixed on the stranger. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows as Emily examined the girl, noting malnourishment, bruises, and marks from prolonged restraint. "No ID," Emily said, her voice low. "She hasn't said a word." Caleb nodded, his jaw tight. Lily, usually wary of strangers, stepped closer, offering the girl a folded piece of her drawing, a single golden star. The girl's fingers trembled as she took it, her eyes flickering with something like hope. Caleb glanced out the clinic window, where snow buried Main Street in silence. Pine Hollow was his home, his refuge after loss, but tonight it felt different. The town's charm hid something sinister, and the girl's haunted gaze confirmed it. He thought of Anna, who'd loved this place for its simplicity, and wondered what she'd make of this moment. Protecting Lily had been his mission since her mother's death, but now another child needed him, a child who'd survived horrors he could only imagine. As Ranger settled at Lily's feet, his steady presence a bridge between the girls, Caleb felt the weight of a new responsibility. Whatever secrets Pine Hollow held, he'd uncover them. For Lily. For the girl. For justice. The Pine Hollow Clinic was a small, sterile oasis in the heart of the blizzard, its walls lined with faded posters about flu shots and community health. Sheriff Caleb Dawson stood by the window, his broad frame silhouetted against the snow-lashed glass, his dark eyes scanning the empty street as if answers might emerge from the storm. At 38, Caleb carried the weight of his past, years as an Army Ranger, a Bronze Star he never mentioned, and the loss of his wife Anna, whose absence still echoed in his quiet moments. His short-cropped brown hair was flecked with early gray, and his sheriff's uniform, though neatly pressed, bore the faint smell of smoke from the burning car. Caleb was a man of few words, his directness sometimes mistaken for coldness, but those who knew him saw the fierce loyalty beneath, especially for his daughter Lily. He'd moved to Pine Hollow to give her a safe, simple life, but tonight's rescue had shattered that illusion. His calloused hands rested on his utility belt, fingers brushing the holster as he processed the girl's chains, the dead driver, and the nagging sense that Pine Hollow's troubles ran deeper than he'd ever imagined. In the exam room, 8-year-old Lily Dawson sat cross-legged on a chair, her small frame swallowed by a puffy blue jacket. Her hazel eyes, so like Anna's, were wide and watchful, framed by a tangle of curly brown hair spilling from her knit cap. Lily hadn't spoken since Anna's car accident 4 years ago, a silence that baffled doctors and tore at Caleb's heart. She communicated through gestures, tugs on his sleeve, quick nods, and her vivid drawings, which filled notebooks with forests, stars, and sometimes her mother's smiling face. Lily's quiet wasn't just grief, it was a wall she'd built, one Caleb and Ranger worked daily to scale. Tonight, though, something had shifted. Lily's gaze kept drifting to the rescued girl, her fingers clutching a sketchpad where she'd drawn a golden star. Her empathy, raw and instinctive, reached for the stranger in a way Caleb hadn't seen before, stirring a fragile hope in his chest. Ranger, their Belgian Malinois, lay at Lily's feet, his sleek black and tan coat gleaming. Under the fluorescent lights, at 3 years old, Ranger was more than a therapy dog. He was Lily's anchor, trained to sense her distress and provide pressure therapy with his steady weight. His military background made him alert to danger, his amber eyes missing nothing. Ranger's bond with Lily was profound. He'd lie beside her during nightmares, his warmth coaxing her back to calm. Tonight, he'd sensed the crashed car before Caleb had, his barks cutting through the storm. Now he watched the exam room door, ears twitching, as if guarding both Lily and the new girl. Ranger wasn't just a pet, he was family, his loyalty. A silent vow to protect. The rescued girl whom they'd yet to name sat on the exam table, wrapped in a heated blanket. At 12 she was painfully thin, her blonde hair matted, her blue eyes hollowed by fear and hunger. Bruises mottled her arms, and the raw skin beneath her chained wrists told a story of prolonged captivity. She hadn't spoken, her silence different from Lily's, born of trauma, not choice. Yet, when Lily offered her the star drawing, the girl's trembling fingers had closed around it, clutching it like a lifeline. Her delicate features beneath the dirt hinted at a resilience that had carried her through horrors Caleb could only guess at. She was a mystery, a child without a name or history, but her presence had already woven itself into Caleb's sense of duty. Dr. Emily Harper, Pine Hollow's only physician, moved with quiet efficiency. Her auburn hair pulled into a practical ponytail. At 35, Emily was a fixture in town, known for her compassion and no-nonsense approach. She'd treated everything from broken bones to broken spirits, earning the trust of a community that valued deeds over words. Emily had been the one to suggest Ranger for Lily, recognizing the girl's need for a non-human ally. Her friendship with Caleb was built on shared silences and mutual respect. She never pried about his past, and he appreciated her discretion. Tonight, her green eyes were shadowed with concern as she documented the girl's injuries. Her gentle questions met with silence. Emily's steady presence was a balm, but her furrowed brow told Caleb she suspected the same darkness he did. Deputy Mark Reynolds, Caleb's right-hand man, leaned against the clinic's counter, his lanky frame at odds with his sharp mind. At 30, Mark was Pine Hollow born and bred, his easy grin masking a keen skepticism about the town's elite. His sandy hair was perpetually tousled, and his deputy's badge gleamed on his jacket. Mark had been the first to welcome Caleb to Pine Hollow, offering a cold beer and a rundown of local quirks. He'd become a friend, checking on Lily during Caleb's long shifts and sharing Caleb's unease about Mayor Carter's influence. Mark's humor lightened tense moments, but tonight his jaw was set, his eyes flicking to the exam room. He'd taken Caleb's statement about the crash, noting the stolen plates and cash in the car, and his gut told him this was no random crime. Mayor Evelyn Carter was absent from the clinic, but her shadow loomed large. At 50, she was Pine Hollow's charismatic leader, her silver blonde hair and tailored suits projecting authority. Elected 3 times, Evelyn was a master of charm, her speeches about community values winning hearts. But her quick interventions in town affairs, rerouting funds, dismissing concerns, raised eyebrows. Her office in the municipal building was adorned with photos of her shaking hands with state officials, and her morning coffee at Mabel's was a ritual that silenced gossip. Caleb had clashed with her over budget cuts to the sheriff's department. Sensing her smiles hid calculation. Her ties to a company called Bright Horizons, rumored to fund her campaigns, gnawed at him now, especially after tonight's discovery. As Caleb watched Lily and the girl through the exam room's window, Ranger's head lifted, sensing his tension. The characters in this unfolding drama, Lily's quiet courage, the girl's unspoken pain, Emily's steady care, Mark's loyal support, and Evelyn's hidden motives, were threads in a tapestry Caleb couldn't yet see. Pine Hollow was no longer just a refuge. It was a battleground, and these people, bound by chance and choice, would shape its outcome. The girl's chains, Lily's star, and Ranger's vigilance were the first notes of a song about family, not born of blood, but forged in fire. The Pine Hollow Clinic hummed with a tense quiet, broken only by the soft beeping of a monitor and the occasional gust of wind rattling the windows. Sheriff Caleb Dawson stood in the hallway, his boots leaving faint smudges of snow on the linoleum floor. His sheriff's jacket hung open, the smell of smoke still clinging to it from the burning car. His dark eyes, shadowed with fatigue, flicked. between the exam room and the clinic's entrance, where the storm continued to bury Main Street in white. The weight of the night pressed on him. The chained girl, the dead driver, the fire that had nearly claimed them all. Caleb's military instincts kept him alert, but beneath his stoic exterior, a flicker of hope stirred, sparked by an unexpected moment unfolding before him. Inside the exam room, Dr. Emily Harper adjusted the heated blanket around the rescued girl, her movements gentle but precise. The girl, no more than 12, sat on the edge of the exam table, her thin frame dwarfed by the blanket's folds. Her blonde hair, now freed from some of its tangles, framed a face pale with exhaustion, her blue eyes darting nervously around the room. The chains had been carefully removed by Emily, revealing raw red skin on her wrists, and the metal links were now bagged as evidence. The girl hadn't spoken, not even to give her name, her silence a heavy presence that mirrored Lily's, but felt different, born of fear, not grief. Emily's notes detailed malnourishment, old bruises and cigarette burns on her lower back, each mark a chapter in a story Caleb wasn't sure he could bear to hear. Lily Dawson sat in a plastic chair near the exam table, her small legs dangling, her sketchpad balanced on her lap. At 8 she was a quiet force, her curly brown hair spilling over her jacket, her hazel eyes fixed on the girl with a curiosity that bordered on reverence. Lily's silence, a constant since Anna's death, had always isolated her. But tonight, something had shifted. When Caleb had carried the girl into the clinic, Lily hadn't retreated as she usually did with strangers. Instead, she'd followed, clutching Ranger's leash, her gaze never leaving the newcomer. Now, as Emily stepped away to consult her chart, Lily slid off her chair, her movements deliberate. She reached into her sketchpad, tore out a drawing of a golden star and approached the girl, holding it out like an offering. The girl froze, her eyes widening as she stared at the paper. Her trembling hand hesitated, then closed around the drawing, her fingers brushing Lily's for a fleeting moment. She clutched the star to her chest, her shoulders easing slightly, as if the simple gesture had unlocked a door long sealed. Caleb, watching through the glass, felt his throat tighten. Lily, who shied away from touch, who communicated only through her art and Ranger's presence, had reached out to this stranger. It was the first time since Anna's death that he'd seen his daughter connect with anyone outside their small circle. Ranger, the Belgian Malinois, lay between the girls, his black and tan coat a steady contrast to the sterile room. His amber eyes followed Lily's every move, his ears twitching at the soft rustle of the sketchpad. Trained to sense distress, Ranger had positioned himself equidistant from both children, his warmth a bridge between them. When the girl's breathing hitched a faint tremor of panic, Ranger shifted closer, resting his head near her dangling feet. The girl's free hand twitched, then slowly reached down, her fingers grazing his fur. Ranger didn't flinch, his calm acceptance drawing a ghost of a sigh from her lips. Caleb marveled at the dog's intuition, his ability to weave trust where words failed. Deputy Mark Reynolds entered the clinic, brushing snow from his jacket, his sandy hair damp from the storm. "Dispatch says the ambulance is stuck a mile out," he reported, his voice low to avoid startling the girls. "State police are handling the crash site, but the fire's out. Found cash in the car, 10 grand, hidden in the spare tire. Plates were stolen from Idaho." Caleb nodded, his jaw tightening. The details confirmed his suspicions. This wasn't a random accident. Mark's eyes flicked to the exam room, softening as he saw Lily and the girl. "She say anything yet?" he asked. Caleb shook his head. "Not a word, but Lily, she's different with her." Emily emerged from the exam room, her expression grave. "She's stable, but she's been through hell," she said, keeping her voice low. "No ID, no missing persons match yet. The burns and restraint marks suggest long-term abuse. I've called social services, but with the storm, they won't get here till morning." Caleb's gaze returned to the girls. Lily had scooted her chair closer, her sketchpad open to a new page where she was drawing a tree. The girl watched, her star drawing still pressed to her chest, a faint curiosity softening her fear. "We can't send her to a facility tonight," Emily continued, her green eyes meeting Caleb's. "She needs somewhere safe, someone she can trust." You're an approved foster parent for Lily's needs. Your home's already vetted. Caleb's chest tightened. Taking in a traumatized child, even temporarily, was a risk. Lily's stability was his priority, and their quiet routine was her sanctuary. But as he looked at the girl, her hollowed cheeks and haunted eyes, he saw Anna's compassion reflected in Lily's gesture. He couldn't turn away. "I'll take her," Caleb said, his voice steady. "Just until we sort this out." Emily nodded, relief flickering across her face. Mark clapped a hand on Caleb's shoulder. "I'll handle the paperwork and keep an eye on the mayor's office. Carter's been calling, wanting updates. She's pushing for state custody." Caleb's eyes narrowed. Mayor Evelyn Carter's. Urgency felt wrong, too calculated for a woman who rarely showed interest in sheriff's business. Back in the exam room, Lily looked up as Caleb entered, her gaze questioning but not fearful. The girl's eyes followed him, wary but less guarded, the star drawing still in her hands. Ranger lifted his head, his tail giving a single wag. "We're going home soon," Caleb said gently, addressing both girls. "You'll stay with us. Tonight, okay?" The girl didn't respond, but her grip on the drawing tightened, a silent acceptance. Lily reached out, her small hand resting briefly on the girl's knee, a gesture so tender it nearly undid Caleb. As they prepared to leave, the storm outside seemed to pause, the wind dropping to a mournful sigh. Pine Hollow's secrets were stirring, and Caleb knew this night was only the beginning. The girl's presence, Lily's unexpected connection, and Ranger's steadfast loyalty were stitching together something new, a fragile bond that felt like the first step toward healing. But danger lingered, and Caleb's resolve hardened. He'd protect these girls, no matter what truths awaited. The snow had slowed to a gentle drift by the time Sheriff Caleb Dawson's SUV pulled into the gravel driveway of his cabin on the outskirts of Pine Hollow. The storm's fury had eased, but the air remained sharp, biting at Caleb's face as he stepped out, his breath clouding in the pre-dawn chill. The cabin's porch light cast a warm glow across the snow-covered pines, a beacon of safety that felt precarious tonight. Inside the SUV, Lily clutched her sketchpad, her hazel eyes flickering between her father and the rescued girl, who sat rigid under the emergency blanket. Ranger, the Belgian Malinois, pressed close to both girls, his amber eyes alert, sensing the undercurrent of unease that followed them from the clinic. Caleb opened the back door, offering a reassuring nod to Lily. "Let's get inside, Sparrow," he said softly. She slid out, her small boots crunching in the snow, Ranger leaping down beside her. The girl hesitated, her chained wrists, now freed but still raw, hidden beneath the blanket. Her blue eyes scanned the dark tree line, as if expecting danger to emerge from the shadows. Caleb kept his voice gentle but firm. "You're safe here, come on." She nodded faintly, clutching Lily's star drawing, and followed, her steps tentative, like a deer ready to bolt. Inside, the cabin was a haven of warmth. The stone fireplace crackling with a fresh log Caleb had set before leaving for the therapy session. The scent of pine and coffee lingered, mingling with the faint smokiness of Caleb's jacket. He guided the girl to the guest room, a small space with a twin bed, a quilt Anna had made, and a nightlight shaped like a crescent moon. "You can rest here," he told her. "Bathroom's down the hall. We'll get you some clean clothes." She didn't respond, but her eyes lingered on the quilt, a flicker of longing crossing her face before she sat on the bed's edge, still holding the drawing. Lily hovered in the doorway, Ranger at her side. She pointed to the nightlight, then to the girl, her gesture a silent question. Caleb understood. "Good idea, Lily. Keep it on." Lily nodded, her curls bouncing, and darted to her room, returning with a pair of her own pajamas, too small, but clean. She set them on the bed, then stepped back, giving the girl space. The girl's fingers brushed the fabric, her expression softening, and Caleb's chest tightened. Lily's small acts of kindness were knitting a thread of trust, fragile but real. As the girl settled, Caleb's radio crackled. Deputy Mark Reynolds' voice came through, low and urgent. "Caleb, you at the cabin? Got something from the crash?" "Sight." Caleb stepped into the kitchen, keeping his voice down. "Go ahead, Mark. The cash in the car, 10 grand, was in a hidden compartment. Traced the vehicle's VIN to a rental agency in Cheyenne, but the plates were stolen from Idaho, and get this, the rental was paid through a shell company, Bright Horizons LLC. Sound familiar? Caleb's jaw clenched. Bright Horizons had donated heavily to Mayor Evelyn Carter's last campaign, a fact Mark had mentioned after a town council meeting. Anything else? Caleb asked. Yeah, Mark said. Mayor Carter called the station, insisting we transfer the girl to state custody ASAP. Says it's standard procedure. Sounded more like an order than a suggestion. Caleb's instincts flared. Evelyn Carter's interest in the girl was too immediate, too forceful. Stall her, he told Mark. Weather's an excuse, roads are still a mess. I need time to figure this out. Mark agreed, promising to dig deeper into Bright Horizons. Caleb hung up, his mind racing. The mayor's push, the cash, the stolen plates. It all pointed to something bigger, something that had brought a chained girl to Pine Hollow's doorstep. He checked on the girls. Lily was in her room, sketching by lamplight. Ranger sprawled across her feet. The guest room door was ajar, the girl lying on the bed, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. The star drawing rested on the pillow beside her. Caleb pulled the door, closed, leaving it cracked and settled on the couch, his service weapon within reach. Sleep wasn't an option, not with the mayor's voice echoing in his head, not with the girl's haunted gaze burned into his memory. By morning, the snow had stopped, leaving Pine Hollow draped in a pristine white blanket. Caleb was brewing coffee when Dr. Emily Harper arrived, her medical bag slung over her shoulder. "Thought I'd check on our guest," she said, her green eyes scanning the cabin. "Any change?" Caleb shook his head. "She's not talking, but she's calmer. Lily's been incredible with her." Emily smiled faintly. "That's Lily. She sees what others miss." In the guest room, Emily examined the girl who sat up, clutching the pajamas Lily had given her. "You're healing," Emily said gently, checking her wrists. "But you need to eat. Can you try some breakfast?" The girl nodded, a small gesture that felt like a victory. Lily appeared, carrying a tray with toast and scrambled eggs, her movements careful but confident. She set it on the bed, pointing to the food, then to the girl. The girl's lips twitched, almost a smile, as she took a tentative bite. Caleb watched from the doorway, pride swelling for his daughter's quiet courage. Emily pulled Caleb aside. "Social services called. They're sending someone tomorrow, but the mayor's been in touch with them, pushing for immediate transfer. She's framing it as concern for the girl, but it feels off." Caleb's fists clenched. "She's not going anywhere until I know she's safe," he said. Emily nodded, her expression resolute. "I'll back you, but Caleb, be careful. Carter's got connections, state level, maybe higher." As Emily left, Caleb's phone buzzed, a text from Mark. "Bright Horizons linked to offshore accounts. Mayor's name on donor lists, watch your back." The word sent a chill down Caleb's spine. He looked at the girls now sitting together in the living room, Lily showing the girl her sketch pad. Ranger lay between them, his ears perked, as if sensing the gathering storm. The mayor's haste, the money, the girl's chains, they were pieces of a puzzle, and Caleb was certain Pine Hollow held the key. Protecting the girl meant confronting whatever darkness hid behind the town's charming facade, and he'd need every ounce of his strength to keep both girls safe. The morning sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden glow across Pine Hollow's snow-blanketed landscape. Inside Sheriff Caleb Dawson's cabin, the air was warm with the scent of fresh coffee and the soft crackle of the fireplace. The living room, with its worn plaid couch and walls adorned with Lily's crayon drawings, felt like a sanctuary, stark contrast to the storm of secrets brewing outside. Caleb stood at the kitchen counter, his hands wrapped around a mug, watching the two girls in the living room with a mixture of awe and resolve. The rescued girl, whom Lily had named Grace after sketching her as a figure beneath a starry sky, was beginning to find her place in their quiet world, and Caleb could feel the fragile bonds forming, like threads weaving a new family. Lily, Dawson at 8, was a whirlwind of silent empathy. Her curly brown hair was tucked behind her ears as she knelt on the rug, her sketchpad open to a drawing of a snow-covered tree. Her hazel eyes, bright with purpose, flicked to Grace, who sat cross-legged. Beside her, the star drawing Lily had given her tucked into the pocket of Lily's two small pajamas. Lily's silence, a constant since Anna's death, had always been a barrier, but with Grace it was a bridge. She moved with a careful grace, offering Grace a crayon and pointing to the sketchpad, inviting her to join. When Grace hesitated, Lily drew a second tree beside her own, then slid the pad closer, her gesture saying what words couldn't, "You belong here." Grace, the 12-year-old whose real name remained a mystery, was a study in contrasts. Frail, yet resilient. Silent, yet expressive. Her blonde hair, now washed and combed, framed a face still pale from hunger. But her blue eyes held a spark of curiosity that hadn't been there the night before. The bruises on her arms and the raw marks on her wrists were fading under Dr. Emily Harper's care, but the deeper wounds, fear, distrust, lingered. Yet with Lily, Grace seemed to soften. She took the crayon, her hand trembling, and added a small star to Lily's tree, her first contribution to their shared world. The act was small, but to Caleb it was monumental, a sign that Grace was beginning to trust, to heal. Ranger, the Belgian Malinois, sprawled across the rug, his black and tan coat a steady presence between the girls. His therapy training made him attuned to their emotions, and his military background kept him vigilant. When Grace's hand faltered with the crayon, Ranger nudged her knee with his nose, his warmth coaxing a faint smile from her lips. He'd appointed himself her guardian, just as he had with Lily, his amber eyes tracking their every move. Caleb marveled at Ranger's ability to sense what words couldn't convey, his loyalty stitching the girls together in a way Caleb couldn't have anticipated. Outside, the snow sparkled under the sun, and Caleb took the girls to the backyard, a small clearing backed by towering pines. The fresh powder was perfect for play, and Lily, bundled in her jacket, tugged Grace's hand, leading her to a snowbank. Caleb watched from the porch, his coffee cooling in his hands, as Lily showed Grace how to roll a snowball, her mitten-clad hands gesturing animatedly. Grace, hesitant at first, mimicked her movements stiff but growing bolder. Ranger bounded around them, his tail wagging, pushing the snowball with his nose until it grew into the base of a lopsided snowman. Lily's soft hum, a melody Anna used to sing, floated through the air, the first sound Caleb had heard from her in years. His heart swelled, the sound a fragile gift he hadn't dared hope for. Grace laughed, a quiet, startled sound, as Ranger shook snow from his fur, showering them both. The laughter transformed her face, erasing the haunted look for a fleeting moment. Lily clapped, her eyes shining, and Caleb felt a lump in his throat. This was more than play. It was connection, a shared language of joy that transcended their silences. He snapped a mental picture, knowing these moments were rare, precious, and worth protecting. Inside, over hot cocoa, Grace's guard lowered further. She drew again, this time without prompting, her crayon tracing the outline of a large building with barred windows and a heavy door. Above it she wrote Stonehouse in shaky letters, her hand pausing as if the memory weighed too much. Caleb sat across from her, keeping his voice soft. "Is that where you were, Grace?" She nodded, her eyes dropping to the table, but she didn't pull away when Lily touched her arm, a gesture of solidarity. "Can you tell me anything about it?" Caleb asked. Grace's voice was a whisper, her first words since the rescue. "Cold, lots of kids. They sold us." The words hung in the air, chilling Caleb to his core. He exchanged a glance with Lily, whose wide eyes showed she understood more than he wished. Caleb's phone buzzed, breaking the moment, a text from Deputy Mark Reynolds, Bright Horizons linked to a trafficking case in Denver. Mayor Carter's pushing harder for Grace's transfer, called the governor's office. Something's not right. Caleb's instincts screamed. The stone house, Bright Horizons, Mayor Carter's urgency. It was all connected. He thought of Anna, who'd been investigating shady adoption records before her accident, and a cold dread settled in his gut. Had she stumbled onto the same network that had ensnared Grace? He looked at the girls now building a pillow fort with Ranger's enthusiastic help, Grace's tentative smile returning as Lily draped a blanket over their creation. The sight grounded him, fueling his determination. Grace's revelation about the stone house was a lead, but it also meant danger was closing in. Mayor Carter's influence, the money in the crashed car, the chains, they pointed to a trafficking ring with roots in Pine Hollow. Caleb knew protecting Grace and Lily meant confronting that darkness, no matter the cost. The girls' laughter, Ranger's playful bark, and the warmth of the cabin were worth fighting for, a reminder that even in the face of evil, hope could take root. The afternoon light filtered through the pines surrounding Sheriff Caleb Dawson's cabin, casting long shadows across the snow-dusted yard. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of hot cocoa and the muffled giggles of Lily and Grace, who were sprawled on the living room rug, sketching in Lily's pad while Ranger sprawled nearby, his tail thumping lazily. The scene was a fragile bubble of warmth, but Caleb's mind was far from calm. Grace's whispered revelation about the stone house and the trafficking ring it implied had set his nerves on edge. The pieces, bright horizons, Mayor Evelyn Carter's pressure, the cash in the crashed car, were forming a picture he didn't like, one that threatened the safety of the girls and the quiet life he'd built for Lily in Pine Hollow. Caleb stood at the kitchen counter, his coffee cold, his phone buzzing with another text from Deputy Mark Reynolds. Carter's at the station, demanding a meeting about the girl. Found a wire transfer, $50K from Bright Horizons, to an account tied to Carter's campaign. Be careful. Caleb's jaw tightened. The mayor's insistence on transferring Grace to state custody wasn't just bureaucratic, it was personal. He glanced at the girls, Lily pointing to a new drawing of a snowman, Grace adding a scarf with a shy smile. Their budding bond was a lifeline, but it also made them targets. Caleb's military instincts, honed in war zones, screamed that danger was closing in, and he couldn't shake the memory of Anna's accident, now suspecting it was tied to the same shadowy network. A sharp knock at the door jolted him. Ranger's head snapped up, a low growl rumbling in his chest as he positioned himself between the girls and the entrance. Lily's eyes widened, her crayon pausing, while Grace shrank back, clutching the star drawing. Caleb motioned for them to stay put, his hand resting on his service weapon as he approached the door. Through the window he saw two strangers, a man in a tailored overcoat and a woman in a fur-trimmed jacket, their faces composed but their eyes sharp. Behind them, a sleek black SUV idled in the driveway, its tinted windows glinting ominously. Caleb opened the door, keeping his body in the threshold. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice even but laced with steel. The man extended a hand, his smile practiced. "James Warren, and this is my wife Laura. We're here about our daughter, Sophie. We heard she was found after a car accident." Caleb didn't take the hand, his gaze flicking to the woman whose manicured fingers clutched a leather folder. "Your daughter?" he said, skepticism clear. Laura Warren's voice was soft but calculated, her eyes glistening with rehearsed emotion. "Sophie ran away a month ago. We've been searching everywhere. When we heard about the girl you rescued, we knew it was her." She opened the folder, producing a photo of a blonde girl with Grace's features, smiling in a school portrait. The resemblance was striking, but something felt off. The smile in the photo was flat, the eyes distant, like a mask. Caleb's gut churned. "Mind if I ask why she ran?" he said, his tone neutral. James Warren's jaw tightened, but his voice remained smooth. "Sophie's had emotional issues since we adopted her at 7. She's been in therapy, but she gets ideas. Claims we're not her real parents. It's been heartbreaking." Laura dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, but Caleb caught the glance she exchanged with her husband. Calculated, not grieving. He took the photo, studying it. "The girl I found was chained in a car, physically restrained. Any idea how that happened?" The Warrens stiffened. "Perhaps she was kidnapped after running away," Laura suggested quickly. "Some predator took advantage of her vulnerability." James added, "We just want her home, Sheriff. She needs her family." Caleb's eyes narrowed. The burns, the malnutrition, Grace's terror, they didn't align with a simple runaway story. "I'll need to verify your documents," he said, "and see how she reacts to you. Standard procedure." He led them to the living room window, where Grace and Lily were now huddled behind the couch, Ranger standing guard. "Sophie!" Laura called through the glass, her voice syrupy. "It's Mommy and Daddy!" Grace's reaction was immediate and visceral. Her face drained of color, her body curling into itself as she sank to the floor, a low whimper escaping her lips. Lily dropped beside her, her small hand gripping Grace's, her eyes blazing with protective fury. Ranger's hackles rose, his growl deepening as he positioned himself between the girls and the window. "She's upset," Caleb said, stepping back from the glass, his voice cold. "You should leave." James Warren's composure cracked, his voice rising. "That's our daughter, Sheriff. We have rights." Laura clutched her husband's arm, her eyes narrowing. "We've spoken with Mayor Carter. She assured us of your cooperation." Caleb's blood ran cold. Carter's involvement was no surprise, but the Warrens' confidence confirmed she was pulling strings. "Mayor doesn't call the shots here," he said. "Until I'm satisfied the girl stays with me." The Warrens exchanged a look, then retreated to their SUV, James muttering about lawyers. As the vehicle sped off, Caleb crouched beside Grace, who was trembling, tears streaming down her face. "They're gone," he said gently. "You're safe." Grace shook her head, her voice a hoarse whisper. "They'll come back. They always do." Lily squeezed her hand, her silent strength her anchor, and Ranger nudged Grace's side, his warmth steadying her. That night, after the girls were asleep, Grace in the guest room, Lily in hers with Ranger between them, Caleb found a plain envelope, slipped under the front door. Inside was a single photo, Anna's grave defaced with red paint spelling "Stop." A typed note read, "Return what isn't yours." Caleb's heart pounded, his mind flashing to Anna's accident, her brakes failing, on a rainy night. Had she been silenced for uncovering Bright Horizons' secrets? He locked the doors, checked the windows, and called Mark. "We need surveillance on the Warrens and Carter," he said. "This just got personal." As he sat on the couch, the photo burning a hole in his pocket, Caleb looked at Lily's latest, drawing on the coffee table, a snowman with 2 stick figures and a dog labeled "Us." The girl's bond, Ranger's loyalty, and the threat now at his door solidified his resolve. The Warrens, Carter, and Bright Horizons were part of something sinister, and Caleb would protect his girls at all costs, even if it meant tearing Pine Hollow's facade apart. The Pine Hollow dawn broke crisp and clear, the snow-draped mountains glowing pink under the rising sun. Inside Sheriff Caleb Dawson's cabin, the air was heavy with the weight of the previous night's threat. The defaced photo of Anna's grave lay on the kitchen counter, its red-painted message, "Stop," a stark reminder of the danger circling his home. Caleb hadn't slept, his eyes gritty as he poured a second cup of coffee, his mind churning over the Warrens' visit, Mayor Evelyn Carter's pressure, and the chilling note. The girls, Lily and Grace, were still asleep, Ranger guarding their rooms with his usual vigilance. The quiet of the cabin felt deceptive, a calm before a storm Caleb knew was coming. Caleb's gaze drifted to a framed photo on the mantel, Anna, her auburn hair catching the sunlight, laughing with Lily on her shoulders. Anna had been Pine Hollow's heart, her work at the county records office driven by a fierce sense of justice. Her death in a car accident 4 years ago had been ruled a tragic brake failure, but Caleb's suspicions, rekindled by the note, gnawed at him. Had Anna uncovered something about Bright Horizons, the shadowy company tied to the Warrens and Mayor Carter? The thought that her death wasn't an accident twisted like a knife, but it also fueled his determination to protect Grace and Lily. In the guest room, Grace stirred, her blonde hair splayed across the pillow, Lily's star drawing tucked under her arm. At 12, she was a survivor, her blue eyes carrying the weight of years in captivity. Caleb had stayed up late watching her sleep, struck by how her delicate features echoed Anna's kindness. When she woke, she joined him in the kitchen, her steps silent, her expression wary but less guarded. Lily followed, rubbing her eyes, Ranger padding beside her. The girls sat at the table, Lily sketching a new snowman, Grace watching with a tentative curiosity. Caleb set out oatmeal, his voice gentle. "Morning, girls. Sleep okay?" Lily nodded, pointing to Grace, who gave a small shrug, her first hint of ease. As they ate, Grace's hand trembled, her spoon clinking against the bowl. She glanced at Caleb, then at the drawing, her voice a whisper. "My name's not Sophie, it's Clara, Clara Holt." Caleb froze, the weight of her trust hitting him like a wave. "Clara," he repeated softly, committing it to memory. "Thank you for telling me. Can you share anything else about where you were?" Clara's eyes dropped, but she nodded, her fingers tracing the star. "I was 7 in Cheyenne. They took me from a park, said my parents didn't want me, brought me to the stone house." Caleb kept his expression calm, though his heart raced. "The stone house. What was it like?" Clara's voice grew quieter, her words halting. "Big, cold marble floors, kids in rooms, some little, some my age. They gave us numbers. Mine was 214. She touched behind her ear, where Emily had noted a faded tattoo. "People came, rich people. They picked kids like buying things. The Warrens picked me 3 years ago, said I was their daughter, but they hurt me when I didn't obey." Her voice broke, and Lily reached for her hand, her small fingers steadying Clara's trembling ones. Ranger nudged Clara's knee, his warmth a silent comfort. Caleb's jaw tightened, fury simmering beneath his calm. A trafficking ring, operating under the guise of adoption, right under Pine Hollow's nose. He thought of Anna, who'd been auditing adoption records before her death, her excited call about irregularities the day she died. "Clara, you're so brave for telling me," he said. "Did you ever hear a name for the stone house? Or see anyone else there?" Clara hesitated, then whispered, "They called it the Perfect Path Program, and there was a woman. They called her Aunt Evelyn. She brought new kids sometimes." Caleb's blood ran cold. Aunt Evelyn, Mayor Evelyn Carter. The connection was no longer a suspicion. It was a lead. He kept his voice steady. "You've done so well, Clara. We're going to keep you safe." Clara's eyes searched his, hope warring with fear. "They'll find me," she said. "They always do." Lily shook her head fiercely, pointing to herself, then Caleb, then Ranger. A silent vow. "We're with you." Caleb's phone buzzed, and he stepped into the living room to answer. Deputy Mark Reynolds' voice was tense. "Caleb, FBI's looking into Bright Horizons. It's a front for trafficking, kids sold to elite clients. Carter's name's all over their donor lists, and she's escalating. She's got a state social worker coming today, claiming you're obstructing protocol." Caleb's grip tightened. "She's involved, Mark. Clara just named her as a regular at the trafficking hub. We need to move fast." Hanging up, Caleb returned to the kitchen, his mind racing. He rifled through a locked drawer, pulling out Anna's old notebook, one he'd kept but never opened, too raw with grief. Inside were her neat notes. Bright Horizons, adoption dates, don't match. Funds to offshore accounts, crescent moon logo. Caleb's breath caught. Clara's drawings of the stone house included a crescent moon above the door. Anna had been onto the same ring, and it had cost her life. The realization hit like a punch. Her accident was murder, orchestrated to silence her. He looked at the girls, now coloring together, Lily humming softly, Clara adding stars to their shared sketch. The sight anchored him, but the threat loomed larger. The Warrens' claim, Carter's influence, and the defaced grey photo were warnings, and Clara's revelation about the Perfect Path program tied it all together. Caleb knew confronting Carter or the Warrens without proof was risky, but waiting could mean losing Clara, or worse. Ranger lifted his head, sensing Caleb's tension, his amber eyes steady. The girls' bond, forged in shared silence and courage, was worth any fight, and Caleb would tear through Pine Hollow's secrets to keep them safe. The Pine Hollow Municipal Building loomed at the center of town, its brick facade and white columns standing resolute against the melting snow. Sheriff Caleb Dawson parked his SUV in the lot, his knuckles white on the steering wheel as he steeled himself. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth, but Caleb's mind was locked on the task ahead, confronting Mayor Evelyn Carter. Clara's revelation about the Perfect Path program and Carter's role as Aunt Evelyn in the trafficking ring had ignited a fire in him. The defaced photo of Anna's grave, the Warrens' bold claim, and the mounting evidence tying Carter to Bright Horizons left no room for hesitation. This wasn't just about protecting Clara and Lily. It was about uncovering the truth Anna had died for. Inside the cabin, Caleb had left the girls with Dr. Emily Harper, who'd arrived to check on Clara's recovery. Ranger stayed with them, his vigilant presence a comfort, as Emily promised to. Keep the doors locked. Deputy Mark Reynolds rode with Caleb, his lanky frame tense in the passenger seat, a folder of evidence tucked under his arm. "You sure about this, Caleb?" Mark asked, adjusting his deputy's badge. "Carter's slippery. If she's as deep in this as Clara says, she'll have an exit plan." Caleb's jaw set. "She's been dodging too long. Clara's testimony. Anna's notes, your financial records, it's enough to shake her. I need her to slip up." The municipal building's lobby was quiet, the receptionist's smile faltering as Caleb strode past, Mark at his heels. "Sheriff, the mayor's in a meeting," she started, but Caleb didn't break stride, pushing open the heavy oak door to Carter's office. Evelyn Carter looked up from her desk, her silver-blonde hair immaculate, her tailored blazer crisp. Her eyes, sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses, narrowed briefly before her politician's smile snapped into place. "Sheriff Dawson, Deputy Reynolds," she said, her voice smooth as polished stone. "This is unexpected. To what do I owe the visit?" Caleb didn't sit, his broad frame filling the room with quiet menace. "Bright Horizons," he said, cutting to the chase. "Perfect Path program. $50,000 wired to an offshore account linked to your campaign. A girl chained in a car calling you Aunt Evelyn. Care to explain?" He tossed Mark's folder onto her desk, financial records and Anna's notes spilling out, the crescent moon logo glaring from a photocopied page. Carter's smile didn't waver, but her fingers twitched, betraying a flicker of unease. "I'm afraid you've been misinformed," Carter said, leaning back in her chair. "Bright Horizons is a reputable adoption agency. Their donations are public record vetted by the state. As for this Aunt Evelyn nonsense, it's clearly a traumatized child's confusion." Her voice dripped with sympathy, but her eyes were cold, calculating. "You're under stress, Sheriff, caring for that girl and your daughter. Perhaps you're seeing conspiracies where there are none." Caleb's voice was low, controlled. Anna saw them too. She was auditing adoption records, found discrepancies tied to Bright Horizons. The day she died, she called me, excited about a lead. Her brakes failed that night. Convenient, don't you think? Carter's composure flickered, her lips tightening. "Tragic, yes, but accidents happen. You're grasping at straws, Sheriff." Mark stepped forward, his usual grin absent. "Not straws, wire transfers, offshore accounts. A trafficking hub called the Perfect Path program, matching Clara's description. You've been pushing to move her out of Caleb's care since the second she was found. Why the rush, Mayor?" Carter's gaze darted to the folder, then back to Caleb. "I'm protecting this town's reputation," she said. "A child in distress needs proper care, not a sheriff playing foster parent during an active investigation." Caleb leaned in, his voice a growl. "Clara was sold, Carter. To the Warrens through your program. She has Burns, a tattooed number. 214. She saw you at the Stonehouse, bringing kids in, taking others away. You're not protecting Pine Hollow. You're hiding your tracks." Carter's face paled, but she recovered quickly, her laugh sharp. "This is absurd. You have no proof, just a child's story and old notes from a tragic accident. Accuse me again, Sheriff, and you'll face a defamation suit." She stood, smoothing her blazer. "But I'm reasonable. Meet me at Quarry Ridge tonight, 9 p.m. I'll share everything I know about Bright Horizons, off the record. Come alone." Caleb's eyes narrowed. Quarry Ridge was isolated, a perfect spot for an ambush. He didn't trust her, but her offer was a crack in her armor, a chance to draw out more. "I'll think about it," he said, turning to leave, Mark following. Carter's voice stopped him at the door. "Be careful, Sheriff. Stirring up trouble can have consequences." Outside, Mark grabbed Caleb's arm. "You're not meeting her, are you? It's a trap." Caleb shook his head. No way. She's either planning to run or set me up. Put a deputy on her house, discreetly. I want to know if she moves. Mark nodded, his expression grim. FBI's digging into Perfect Path. Agent Lopez says they've got eyes on a Denver property, matching Clara's description. We're close, Caleb, but Carter's got pull. If she bolts, we lose her. Back at the cabin, Caleb found Emily in the living room, the girls in the backyard building a snow fort under Ranger's watchful eye. Emily's face was tight with worry. Clara had a panic attack while you were gone, she said. Saw a black SUV drive by, same model as the Warrens. She kept saying, Aunt Evelyn will take me back. She's terrified, Caleb. His stomach churned. She named Carter at the Stone House, he told Emily, recounting the confrontation. Anna was onto the same ring. Her accident wasn't an accident. Emily's eyes widened. You think Carter had Anna killed? Caleb nodded, the truth settling like lead. She was a threat, just like Clara is now. He looked out the window, where Lily was showing Clara how to pack snow, their laughter faint but real. Clara's courage in naming Carter, Lily's humming, Ranger's steadfast guard. They were reasons to keep fighting. But Carter's offer, the Warrens' persistence and the grave photo were warnings of a tightening noose. Caleb knew the next move could tip the scales, toward justice or disaster. He needed proof, and he needed it fast, before Pine Hollow's secrets claimed another life. The snow fell in heavy, relentless flakes, transforming the Wyoming forest into a white labyrinth as Sheriff Caleb Dawson drove his SUV along a narrow, dirt road. The headlights barely pierced the storm, illuminating the path to Deputy Mark Reynolds's hunting cabin, a secluded refuge 15 miles from Pine Hollow. Caleb's shoulder throbbed from a minor graze he'd sustained earlier, a reckless moment checking a suspicious noise near his cabin, but he pushed the pain aside. In the back seat, Lily and Clara clung to each other, Ranger's massive form a protective barrier between them. The girls' faces were pale, their eyes wide with the unspoken fear that had driven them here. Mayor Evelyn Carter's trap at Quarry Ridge, the Warrens' persistent pursuit, and the defaced photo of Anna's grave had forced Caleb's hand. The cabin was their last stand, a place to keep the girls safe while he and Mark unraveled the trafficking ring tied to Bright Horizons, and the Perfect Path program. Caleb had taken emergency leave, citing Lily's needs, but in truth he couldn't leave Clara with anyone else. Her revelation about Carter's role in the Stone House and the confirmation that Anna's death was no accident had lit a fuse. Mark had called an hour ago, reporting that FBI agent Lopez was closing in on the Denver facility Clara described, but they needed more. Hard evidence to tie Carter and the Warrens to the operation. Caleb's phone, now switched off after suspecting it was hacked during a break-in at his cabin, lay useless in his pocket. The break-in had been methodical. Files. On Anna's accident stolen, Clara's medical photos gone, and a message painted on the wall. Time's up. They were running out of options. The cabin emerged from the snow, a squat log structure with no electricity or phone lines, off the grid and nearly invisible in the storm. Caleb parked behind a copse of pines, cutting the engine. "Stay low," he told the girls, his voice calm but firm. Lily nodded, her small hand gripping Clara's while Clara's eyes darted to the windows, her breathing shallow. Ranger's ears were perked, his growl low, sensing the tension. Mark met them at the door, his deputy's jacket dusted with snow. "No one followed," he said, ushering them inside. "Fire's going. We're secure for now." Inside, the cabin was sparse, a wood stove, a worn sofa, a single bedroom. Caleb settled the girls on the sofa, wrapping them in blankets. Lily pulled out her sketch pad, drawing a star, her silent way of comforting Clara, who clutched the original star drawing like a talisman. Ranger lay at their feet, his amber eyes scanning the room. Caleb and Mark stepped to the window, keeping their voices low. "Carter cancelled her Quarry Ridge meet," Mark said. "She's holed up at her house, but the Warrens checked out of their hotel. Lopez says they're moving assets, kids included, out of Denver. If we don't act now, we lose them." Caleb's jaw clenched. "Clara's testimony is our best shot, but Carter's got state connections. We need physical proof." He glanced at the girls, Lily humming softly, Clara sketching a crescent moon. The symbol, tied to Anna's notes and the stone house, was their key. But time was slipping away. The storm outside howled, a temporary shield, but Caleb knew their enemies wouldn't wait. Hours later, as night deepened, the girls played cards by lantern light, their laughter a fragile defiance against the darkness. Caleb sat with them, forcing a smile, when Ranger's head snapped up, his growl cutting through the air. The dog stood, hackles raised, staring at the door. Caleb motioned for silence, dousing the lantern. Outside, headlights sliced through. The snow, 3 vehicles, a black SUV flanked by 2 sedans, emerging into the clearing. "How the hell did they find us?" Mark hissed, drawing his weapon. Caleb's mind raced. "My phone," he said, cursing himself. "They must have tracked it before I shut it off." Car doors slammed, flashlight beams sweeping the cabin. A voice rang out, James Warren's, cold and commanding. "Dawson, we know you're in there. Send out Sophie and this ends peacefully." Caleb's blood boiled. Clara wasn't Sophie and the Warrens weren't parents. They were traffickers. He turned to the girls, their faces pale in the dim firelight. "Back room," he whispered. "Now." Mark helped the girls to the bedroom, where a trapdoor in the closet led to a small cellar. Clara clung to Lily, her voice a terrified whisper. "They'll kill you, that's what they do." Caleb crouched, his eyes level with hers. "I won't let them take you, Clara. Trust me." Lily grabbed Ranger's collar, her eyes fierce, and nodded. As Mark lowered them into the cellar, Ranger's growl softened, obeying Lily's silent command to stay quiet. Caleb positioned himself by the front window, Mark at the back door. Through the glass, he counted 6 figures, James and Laura Warren, 3 armed men, and to his shock, Mayor Carter, her silver-blonde hair unmistakable. "Last chance, Dawson," Warren shouted, leveling a shotgun. Caleb raised his voice, stalling. "FBI's onto you, Warren. Perfect Path's under surveillance. It's over." A tense silence followed. Then Carter stepped forward, her voice cutting. "You're bluffing, Sheriff. If the feds had anything, they'd be here. Hand her over or we come in." Caleb exchanged a glance with Mark. They were outgunned, but the storm was their ally, muffling sound and movement. "Draw them to the trees," Caleb whispered. "I'll flank." Mark slipped out the back, deliberately crunching snow to lure. The pursuers. 3 men followed, leaving the Warrens, Carter, and 1 guard. Caleb circled outside, using the snow's cover, his shoulder throbbing but adrenaline sharp. Inside, Warren tore through the cabin, overturning furniture, while Carter barked orders. "She's here somewhere." Warren roared, ripping up floorboards. Caleb kicked in the front door, weapon raised. "Drop it," he shouted. Warren whirled, firing wildly, the shotgun blast splintering wood near Caleb's head. He dove behind the sofa, returning fire, grazing the guard's arm. Carter bolted for the door, but the guard advanced, gun aimed at Caleb's chest. Pain flared in Caleb's shoulder as another shot clipped him, his vision blurring. "Finish him," Warren ordered, raising the shotgun. Time slowed, Caleb's thoughts flashing to Lily's humming, Clara's courage, Anna's smile. A ferocious bark shattered the chaos. Ranger burst from the bedroom, launching himself at Warren. The trafficker screamed as Ranger's jaws clamped his arm, the shotgun firing into the ceiling. Caleb lunged, tackling the guard, wresting the gun away and knocking him out. Warren writhed under Ranger's weight, pleading, "Call off your dog." Caleb, blood seeping through his jacket, stood over him, voice icy. "He's not mine, he chooses." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Mark had called reinforcements. Carter had vanished into the storm, but the Warrens were done. Clara and Lily emerged, trembling but unharmed, Ranger returning to their side. "Is it over?" Clara whispered. Caleb pressed his good hand to his wound, meeting her eyes. "Almost, Clara. Almost." As state police swarmed the cabin, the girls' bond, Ranger's bravery, and Caleb's resolve held fast, a beacon in the fading storm. The Pine Hollow Hospital was a beacon of fluorescent light against the fading storm, its small emergency wing bustling with state police and FBI agents in the aftermath of the cabin showdown. Sheriff Caleb Dawson sat on a gurney, his shoulder bandaged from the gunshot graze, the pain dulled by adrenaline and relief. His dark eyes, though weary, were fixed on the hospital room across the hall, where Lily and Clara sat side by side on a bed. Ranger sprawled protectively at their feet. The girls' hands were clasped, their faces pale but resolute, the star drawing Clara cherished tucked between them. The chaos of the night, the Warrens' attack, Mayor Evelyn Carter's escape, Ranger's fierce defense had left scars, but it had also forged an unbreakable bond, one Caleb felt deep in his chest. Dr. Emily Harper emerged from the room, her auburn hair disheveled, her green eyes bright with exhaustion and determination. "They're shaken, but okay," she told Caleb, adjusting her stethoscope. "Clara's dehydrated, and Lily's got some bruises from the cellar, but they're tough. Ranger's fine, just a scratch." Caleb nodded, gratitude swelling. "Thanks, Emily. For everything." She squeezed his uninjured arm. "You kept them safe, Caleb. That's what matters." Deputy Mark Reynolds strode in, his deputy's jacket rumpled, his sandy hair sticking up from running his hands through it. "FBI's got the Warrens in custody," he reported, his voice tight with triumph. "James and Laura are singing already, naming names, pointing fingers at Bright Horizons higher-ups. Agent Lopez raided the Stone House in Denver at dawn. Found 14 kids, records, even surveillance footage. Perfect paths done." Caleb's jaw relaxed slightly, but his eyes narrowed. "Carter?" Mark's face darkened. "Still in the wind. Slipped out during the cabin fight. FBI's got an APB, but she's got money and connections. Might take time." Caleb's fist clenched, the sting of Carter's escape sharp. She'd been the linchpin, Aunt Evelyn, orchestrating the trafficking ring that stole Clara's childhood, and likely silenced Anna. The thought of Anna's sabotaged brakes, confirmed by an old mechanic's report Mark had dug up, fueled his resolve. "She won't hide forever," Caleb said. "Not from me." Mark nodded, clapping his shoulder. "We'll get her, Caleb. For Clara. For Anna." In the hospital room, Clara's voice, soft but clear, drew Caleb's attention. "I don't have anyone," she was saying, her blue eyes glistening. "My parents died when I was little. The Warrens said I was theirs, but I wasn't." Lily, her curly brown hair framing her face, shook her head fiercely. For the first time in 4 years, her voice broke the silence, small but steady. "You're my sister now." The words hung in the air, a quiet miracle that stopped Caleb's breath. Lily's hazel eyes, so like Anna's, shone with conviction as she pointed to herself, then Clara, then Ranger. "Family." Caleb crossed. The room kneeling beside the bed, his heart full. "Lily's right, Clara," he said, his voice thick. "You belong with us if you want." Clara's eyes searched his, hope battling fear. "You mean it," she whispered. Caleb nodded, a smile breaking through his fatigue. "I do. I'm an approved foster parent. I'll apply for guardianship. This is your home now." Clara's. Tears fell, and she leaned into Lily, who wrapped her arms around her, humming Anna's lullaby. Ranger nudged their hands, his tail wagging, sealing the moment with his warmth. Emily, standing in the doorway, wiped her eyes. "I'll testify to their bond," she said. "No judge would split them up after this." Caleb stood, his shoulder aching but his purpose clear. He thought of Anna, her notes on Bright Horizons, her fight for truth. "There's one more thing," he said to Clara, his voice gentle. "Anna, my wife, she was your aunt, your mum's sister. I found her old letters after you told me your name. That's why you feel like family. She's watching over us." Clara's eyes widened, a sob catching in her throat. "Aunt Anna," she whispered, clutching the star drawing. The cosmic connection, woven through loss and courage, felt like a gift, a thread tying them to Anna's legacy. Caleb's grief softened, replaced by a fierce love for the girls who'd become his world. Mark returned with news. The FBI had recovered Bright Horizons client lists, implicating dozens, including Carter's state-level allies. Her capture was only a matter of time. The Denver raid had freed children as young as 4, each with stories like Clara's, and the nation was waking to the scandal. Pine Hollow, shaken by its mayor's betrayal, was rallying, with Mabel's Diner collecting funds for the rescued kids. Caleb felt a flicker of pride for the town despite its scars. As the girls dozed, Ranger curled between them, Caleb sat by their bed, his hand resting on Lily's sketchpad. A new drawing showed 2 girls, a dog, and a starlit sky labelled home. Lily's voice, Clara's trust, and Ranger's loyalty were miracles born of fire, proof that love could bloom in the darkest places. Carter was still out there, but Caleb knew they'd face her together, a family forged not by blood, but by courage and hope. The late afternoon sun bathed Pine Hollow. In a warm golden haze, the mountains standing sentinel over the valley, as spring's first wildflowers peeked through the melting snow. A year had passed since the night Sheriff Caleb Dawson faced down the Warrens and uncovered Mayor Evelyn Carter's trafficking ring, and the town had begun to heal, its scars softened by time and community. Caleb's new home, a renovated farmhouse, on the edge of town, buzzed with life. Its wide porch overlooked a meadow where elk grazed at dusk, and inside the walls were alive with color. Lily's vibrant drawings now joined by Clara's paintings, a tapestry of stars, trees, and crescent moons that told their story of survival and love. Caleb stood in the kitchen, his shoulder fully healed, the faint scar a reminder of the fight that had changed everything. At 39, his face carried new lines, but his dark eyes shone with a quiet joy he hadn't known since Anna's death. He stirred a pot of chili, the scent mingling with fresh-baked cornbread, as laughter echoed from the living room. Lily, now 9, and Clara, 13, sprawled on the rug, playing a board game with exaggerated groans and giggles. Ranger, their Belgian Malinois, lounged nearby, his black and tan coat gleaming, a tennis ball tucked under his paw from an earlier romp in the yard. The dog's scratches from the cabin fight had healed, and his therapy work continued, his warmth a constant for both girls. Lily's voice, once silenced by grief, was now a melody in the house. She spoke often, her words careful, but growing, bolder, recounting school adventures, or teasing Clara about her latest art project. Her curly brown hair bounced as she moved, her hazel eyes sparkling with the confidence of a child who'd found her place. Clara, legally, Clara Holt Dawson, since Caleb's guardianship was finalized, had transformed from the haunted girl in chains. Her blonde hair was longer, her frame stronger, and her blue eyes held a resilience that inspired Caleb daily. She thrived. In school, her paintings winning a county art contest and her laughter, once so rare, filled the farmhouse like sunlight. The town had rallied in the wake of the Bright Horizons scandal. Evelyn Carter, captured 3 months after her escape, in a sting operation in Montana, was serving a life sentence, her empire of trafficking dismantled. The FBI's raids, spurred by Clara's testimony and Anna's notes, had freed dozens of children, and Pine Hollow had become a symbol of redemption. Mabel's Diner hosted fundraisers for the survivors, and the community center named a scholarship after Anna, honoring her fight for truth. Deputy Mark Reynolds, now acting sheriff while Caleb focused on family, kept the town's spirit high, his humor a balm for lingering wounds. Today, Pine Hollow's annual spring picnic unfolded in the meadow behind the church, a celebration of renewal. Caleb, Lily, and Clara arrived with a tray of cornbread, greeted by cheers and hugs. Dr. Emily Harper, her auburn hair catching the sun, waved them over, her medical bag swapped for a picnic basket. "How you 3 clean up nice," she teased, ruffling Lily's hair. Clara grinned, tossing a frisbee to Ranger, who leaped to catch it, drawing laughter from the crowd. The picnic was alive with music, kids chasing each other, and tables groaning with potluck dishes. A banner read, "Pine Hollow stands together," a nod to the town's role in dismantling the trafficking ring. As the sun dipped, Caleb and the girls joined a circle around a bonfire, the stars emerging in the twilight sky. The community had adopted a ritual inspired by Lily and Clara, a gratitude ceremony where paper stars were placed on a wooden board, each inscribed with something cherished. Lily stood first, her voice clear. "I'm thankful for my voice," she said, pinning a star to the board. Clara followed, her eyes bright. "For my home," she said, her star beside Lily's. Caleb, his throat tight, added his own. "For my daughters," he said, his voice steady but thick with emotion. The crowd clapped, some wiping tears, as Ranger barked, stealing the moment with a playful nudge. Later, back at the farmhouse, the girls sat on the porch swing, wrapped in a quilt, Ranger at their feet. Caleb joined them, a mug of coffee in hand, the night air cool and sweet. The stars above twinkled, a vast canvas that felt like Anna's embrace. "She's proud of us," Clara said softly, her fingers tracing the star drawing she still kept, now framed in her room. Lily nodded, humming Anna's lullaby, the sound weaving their past and present. Caleb's heart swelled, the pain of Anna's loss softened by the family they'd built, unconventional, forged in fire, but unbreakable. He thought of the battles, fought the cabin fight, Carter's betrayal, Anna's truth uncovered, and the victories won. Clara's freedom, Lily's voice, Pine Hollow's redemption. The girls leaned against him, their warmth a promise of brighter days. "We're okay, aren't we, Dad?" Lily asked, her first time using the word since Anna's death. Caleb smiled, kissing her forehead, then Clara's. "Better than okay. Sparrow, we're home." As the stars glowed brighter, Caleb felt Anna's presence, a quiet blessing on their patchwork family. The journey had been brutal, but love had won, stitching their wounds with hope. Ranger's tail thumped, the girls' laughter rose, and Caleb knew no matter what came next, they'd face it together, their light stronger than any darkness.